The young woman sat nervously in the cold interrogation room, her hands clenched into fists beneath the black salon cape draped over her shoulders. She had done nothing wrong, yet here she was, surrounded by officers who looked at her like she didn't belong. Across from her stood Officer Reynolds, a man known for his harsh treatment of people who didn't fit his idea of acceptable. His eyes locked onto her braided hair, filled with silent judgment. Without warning, he grabbed a pair of clippers and clicked them on, the sharp buzzing filling the tense air. "This hair doesn't belong on you," he muttered, moving closer. The girl's heart pounded, but she refused to flinch. What Reynolds didn't know, what he hadn't even bothered to check, was who she really was. In just a few minutes, a phone call would change everything, and his career would come crashing down before he even saw it coming. The air felt thick, as though it was holding its breath. Emily stepped further into the dimly lit room, her heart pounding in her chest. The once familiar walls of the old house now seemed foreign, cold, and almost alive. She had returned here hoping to find answers, but each creak of the floorboards made her wonder if she was truly alone. The faint scent of old wood and dust clung to everything, but there was something else beneath it. A lingering presence. Something she couldn't quite place. Her mind kept returning to that night, 3 years ago, when her brother, Noah, had vanished without a trace. No one believed her when she said something wasn't right, that something in this house had changed him. She never understood why he left or what happened, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the answers were hidden right here, in these walls. She had to know the truth, even if it meant facing whatever had been waiting for her all this time. Emily's fingers brushed the faded wallpaper, peeling at the edges like old secrets trying to escape. The house felt like it was watching her, and each room she stepped into seemed to echo with memories of Noah, his laughter, his smile, the way he used to run up the stairs two at a time. But now the silence was deafening. Nothing here was as she remembered. The sudden flicker of the light made her jump, and her pulse quickened. She shook her head, trying to focus. She wasn't going to let fear get the best of her, not now. She had a reason to be here, a reason to uncover what had happened to Noah. The letter he left behind had been vague, but there was a phrase that stuck with her. Asterisk it's in the walls. Asterisk, what did he mean by that? Emily turned the corner into the hallway, the one where she and Noah had argued just days before he disappeared. She could almost hear his voice again, the words still lingering in the air. He had been distant, more withdrawn than usual. But then something had changed. She never got to ask him about it, never got to understand what had been pulling him away. Had he found something dark? Her footsteps slowed as she reached the old study, its door cracked open just a sliver. The room smelled of stale paper and tobacco, but there was something else now, a sharpness in the air that made her skin crawl. Inside, the desk was untouched, except for a single weathered journal lying open in the middle. She hesitated. If Noah had written this, it might be the only clue she had left. Her fingers trembled as she flipped it open, the pages yellowed with age. The writing was frantic, almost illegible in places, but one sentence caught her eye. Asterisk, they know I'm here. Asterisk. Emily's breath hitched. Who was they? The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She quickly flipped through the pages, her mind racing. There were no clear answers, only more cryptic lines that made little sense. Mentions of whispers, shadows, and a growing darkness that Noah had seemed to be entangled with. As her eyes scanned the pages, a cold draft swept through the room, and the door slammed shut behind her, plunging her into darkness. She felt it then. She wasn't alone. Something or someone was watching her, just like it had watched Noah. And she wasn't sure how much longer she could stay hidden from whatever that thing was. Emily's heart raced as she stood frozen in the dark room. The door was shut tight, and the only sound was the pounding of her own breath. She strained her ears, listening. There was a faint scuffling sound from the far corner of the room, barely perceptible, like something, or someone, was moving just beyond the edge of her vision. She wanted to scream, to run, but her legs felt like lead, unwilling to move. The air grew colder, suffocating, and the silence pressed in on her from all sides. The journal in her hand trembled as she clutched it tightly, trying to steady herself. She had to stay focused, had to keep going. She was so close to the truth, even if she couldn't yet understand what it was. A whisper broke through the silence, so soft it might have been the wind, but Emily knew better. It was a voice. Not Noah's. No, this voice was something older, something darker. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. It was warning her, urging her to leave. But she couldn't. She wouldn't. She had come too far. Her eyes scanned the room desperately, her mind racing. The desk, the chair, the shelves. Every inch of this place felt like it held a secret, as if it was closing in around her. And then something caught her eye. A small hidden latch beneath the desk. A trapdoor. The hairs on the back of her neck prickled. Could this be it? The answer she'd been searching for. She dropped to her knees and fumbled with the latch, her fingers slick with sweat. It clicked open, revealing a dark, narrow staircase leading down into the depths of the house. Emily's gut twisted. This wasn't just a hidden room. It was something far deeper. But this was it. The moment she had feared and longed for. The moment that could change everything. Before she could make up her mind, the whispering grew louder, more urgent. A cold hand seemed to brush her shoulder. She spun around, but there was no one there. The door to the study creaked open slowly, inch by inch, as if something, or someone, was beckoning her forward. With a mix of dread and determination, Emily stood up, her eyes never leaving the darkened staircase. The air in the room seemed to pulse now, as though the house itself was alive and breathing. She had no choice but to descend. Whatever waited for her down there, she had to face it. She had to know the truth, even if it meant confronting the darkness that had taken Noah, and now seemed to want her too. The first step was the hardest. As soon as her foot touched the cold wooden step, a deafening slam rang out from above. The door shut with such force that the entire house seemed to shake. She was trapped, and there was no turning back. The night had fallen heavy over the city, the darkness stretching like a cloak, wrapping everything in an oppressive silence. Only the faint glow of street lamps cut through the gloom, casting long shadows on the rain-slicked streets. Emma stood by the window, her mind racing with the revelations she had uncovered. The documents in her hands felt like a weight she couldn't shake, but it was the message that kept echoing in her head. The truth was closer than she ever could have imagined. She had spent weeks chasing this elusive thread, and now she was so close to unraveling it. Too close. Just as she turned, the shrill ring of her phone broke the silence. Her breath caught in her throat when she saw the caller ID. It was James, the one person she had trusted above all others. But something felt wrong. His voice on the other end was strained, frantic even. "Emma, you need to get out of there, now." His words hit her like a cold splash of water, but before she could respond, the line went dead. She grabbed her bag, her pulse quickening. There was no time to think. The familiar sound of footsteps approaching the door froze her in place. She pressed herself against the wall, holding her breath, praying whoever it was hadn't noticed her. Then the doorknob turned. Her heart pounded in her chest as she quietly slid toward the back exit, her eyes scanning the room for any sign of an escape. But just as she reached the door, a voice echoed through the hall. "Emma, we know you're here. Don't make this harder than it has to be." The calmness in their tone only intensified the terror gnawing at her. The message was clear. They had been watching her for longer than she'd realized, and the game had just changed. She bolted out the door, her feet pounding against the wet pavement as she raced into the night. But the sense of being pursued was palpable. Every step she took felt like a countdown. She darted into an alley, her mind spinning with 1,000 questions. Who was after her? Why had James warned her? And what exactly was she about to uncover? Then out of nowhere, the glow of headlights flashed into the alley, and a black SUV screeched to a halt in front of her. The door swung open, and a figure stepped out, silhouetted against the headlights. It was him, James, but something was wrong. The look in his eyes was cold, unreadable, and the gun in his hand told her everything she needed to know. "Get in the car, Emma," he commanded, his voice devoid of warmth. "It's not what you think."